between the two of them.
The inside of Coates.
Parker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates. Good evening, everyone. Welcome along to the VRRC and an exciting night because it is the start of a new championship. 6 weeks, 8 weeks, in fact, ahead of us of touring car racing action. Those of you who have been tuning in regularly of late on Wednesday nights here at the VRRC, then you'll have been enjoying, I'm sure, our Mazda MX-5 American Championship, which concluded a couple of weeks ago. Now we switch from rear-wheel drive lightweight sports cars to front-wheel drive tin tops. The VRRC Touring Car Trophy utilising a TCR car set with a huge variety of cars, a bumper grid as well, probably the biggest entry that we've had for one of these championships in quite some time, and a European tour that will see the championship conclude on the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit in the UK. It's Andy McEwan here in the commentary box. I'll be joined in a moment or two by Jack Oliphant, as well as our race director, Rich Hayden, who we'll be hearing from a little bit later on. As always, it's Lewis Edwards, who is putting together the broadcast and bringing us the wonderful pictures of all the action, and plenty of that there will be, I'm sure, because this is touring car racing after all. It all starts tonight in Portimao. We start in Portugal, the Algarve circuit in the south of Portugal, with two 20-minute races, the format the same for every round. So gone are those very, very long, arduous 40-minute races that the drivers enjoyed so much, and instead it's all 20-minute sprint racing throughout the season. We head from Portugal to Paul Ricard in France, and then Belgium and the famous Spa-Francorchamps circuit. Then a German doubleheader through the middle part of the season. The Norris Ring makes, I believe, its debut on the VRRC on the 30th of November. Two races around that famous street circuit before we head to the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit on the 7th. December, then to Spain and the Barcelona circuit, the Circuit de Catalunya, before we head to two of, I think, the greatest circuits, not only in Europe, but in the world. The famous Imola circuit in Italy hosts the penultimate round of the championship. And as all touring car championships should, it wraps up at Brands Hatch on the Grand Prix circuit on the 28th of December. So we're taking you right through to the end of 2020, and we're going to send this year and this season of racing on the VRRC out in style. As I said, Andy McEwan here in the comms box. Jack Oliphant is now able to join me, I think. And Jack, touring car racing, some of the best racetracks in the world. This is the way that we should all be spending our winter evenings, and I'm very, very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's a popular series here at the VRRC. It's a popular car, of course. Well, actually, multiple cars. So we've got a whole host of them now. They are all absolutely identical. So anybody who's complaining that there's a Hyundai that's not as quick as a Golf or X, Y, Z, they're all absolutely identical. They've just got different body shapes on them, sort of thing. Everybody's been really excited about it. We've compared to a few of our other championships, we've maxed out the entry list, which is really exciting. We actually added a few more people on and slots on as well. So we've got, I think a lot of people have a lot of excitement about it, and we've got some brilliant prizes on track as well.
I'm still reeling from the notion that a driver would blame their car for being off the pace. No. That's unheard of, surely. We have prizes, as always, here at the VRRC, as well as a trophy for our top three drivers at the end of the season. We also have, once again, our fabulous prizes provided by Aegon. Third place in the championship at the end of the 8 weeks is the 24-inch gaming display, a 27-inch gaming display from Aegon for the championship runner-up, and the champion will receive the 34-inch curved gaming display from Aegon, a fantastic prize, just the thing you need to finish off your sim racing setup. There will also be a Driver of the Round award that is decided every week by ourselves, myself, Jack Oliphant and Lewis Edwards, the whole broadcast team, pitching in and deciding which driver has caught our eye over any given week of racing. So let's wait and see who out of the 20-odd drivers that we've got entered receives that prize here tonight. The racing, like I said, will take place around the Algarve circuit in Portimao. Let's take a quick look at the circuit then before we dive into qualifying.
Welcome everyone to the first round of the Aegon by AOC Touring Car Championship Season 3. We're here at Portimao for the first round of the season. Heading down the hill into turn 1, it's important to pick your braking point nicely, as there's a lot of time to be won and lost through turn 1. Watch the track limits on the exit, And then we're heading into turn 3. Important to sacrifice the exit to make sure we're over nicely to the right-hand side to open up turn 4 as that goes onto a big long straight, and it's important to keep that flat out. No need to cut across the curb here, as that may lose you a mile an hour or two, and in qualifying that could make the difference in a position or two. Into turn 5, heavy on the brakes, you want to get it rotated early and really quickly back to the power, using up all the road that you can. So we've got a little bit of a quick section here. Go through turn 6, easy flat out, all about setting up turn 7. We missed the apex ever so slightly here, so we could have carried a bit more corner speed by turning in a bit earlier. Now into turn 8, get it rotated early and back to the power and really use up all of the road on the exit. As we've got another quick section, so anytime you can gain on the exit. We carried all the way around here into turns 10 and 11. Really difficult braking zone, you're judging how much you can brake to make sure you don't engage the ABS. And then again, sacrificing the exit a little bit to make sure that turn 12 is completely flat out. We now head into the final couple of hairpins at turn 13. Again, sacrificing the exit here to make sure that we set up a good run into turn 14, as this is the one that's going to make the biggest difference to lap time. Early on the power, try and keep a tight line to minimise the distance. And now prepare yourself for turn 15. And then some people will take this flat, some people will lift. I think depending on maybe car choice, tyre wear and ballast, it's going to be tight. And then it's all about the run up to the line. And that is a lap of Portimao.
So there is a look at the Portimao circuit, the Circuito do Algarve in the south of Portugal, and what a brilliant venue for racing it is. Racing coming up in about 10 minutes time, because we first of all have to set the grid for the first race of the season. Qualifying just getting underway, drivers making their way out along the circuit on their out laps, and in these front wheel drive touring cars it will take a lap or so just to get the tyres into the ideal temperature and pressure range for setting the lap time, so expect quicker lap times to come in the next 3 or 4 minutes probably. But it is, Jack, our first opportunity to take a look at that enormous entry we've got. Now, you can sort of forget about Messrs Edwards and Hayden, but we do have 21 drivers entered here tonight. A great variety of car. I think 7 different brands of TCR car are represented. Lots of shiny new liveries to get used to. This is going to take a bit of getting used to, but it's going to be fun whilst we do it.
Yeah, I think it's the first time since potentially League of Champions, not League of Legends, League of Champions, or even the potentially official TCR series that we've done, where I've had to scroll down on the entry list to see the bottom of it on our web browsers. It's impressive and it's exciting, and luckily we've got a whole host of different cars as well, because we were just discussing whilst the hot lap was going on in the background. They had completely free reign of choice over which car they wanted to go, so everybody could have gone in the Audi, everybody could have gone in the Peugeot, but it's nice to see that everybody sort of mixed it up and gone with what they think is their favourites. We've got a host of Civics, the Lincoln Co's are very quick, but that's because they got good drivers, of course. So it's nice to have a big variety out there on track.
Yes, the idea, as one car has a slight moment, that's Ethan Hill, isn't it, who's been off the road coming towards the end of the lap and appears to be struggling to get going again. So Ethan Hill in some sort of strife. That could be significant, because we expected Ethan to be one of the quicker drivers. Perhaps some dodgy internet signal we think might be to blame for that. I've lost my train of thought. Yes, the cars are... the whole point of this car set that we're using is that performance-wise, there is no difference between a Honda Civic, an Alfa Romeo Giulietta, a Hyundai, a Lincoln Co, an Audi, a Cupra. They all, in theory, are capable of the same performance numbers. But what we don't know, Jack, is whether there is a subtle difference in the way the cars feel, because TCR cars are not all the same size, they're not all the same shape, and so it might come down to driver preference. You know, if you like a car that's a little bit edgier, a bit twitchier, a bit more oversteery, then perhaps there is one car that might suit you better than others. Performance-wise, they're the same, but whether it gels with your driving style is another matter.
Yeah, the bet is probably pretty strong on the fact that it's not the Peugeot, because that hasn't been picked by anybody.
Yes.
It seems a lone car that has been left in the pit lane, unfortunately. And I've just seen Andy Dormand actually repping the VRRC TCR car. So that's an interesting, not sure entirely what that one is, but exciting to see. But you're right, there is subtle differences. It might suit different tracks as well, but they have had plenty of time to test in all of the cars over the past sort of 2 or 3 weeks. So I think the servers have even been slightly open, or the options have been open since before the MX-5's finished off. So yeah, loads of opportunity for people to pick their favourite cars, do loads of testing, and we have seen people doing well over 150 laps in practice as well. Expecting very fast lap times here at Portimao. As I said before, people are very excited about it, and Jens Verhoeven is currently top of those times, but we have only had one flying lap, so that's going to come down.
Indeed so, and Kyle Felvers, I can tell you, has gone purple in Sector 1 on his next lap, so we are starting to get quicker sectors coming in, but this is one of the many differences between this car set and some of the other championships we've been running of late. These cars, they run on slick tyres, as have most of the cars that we've used lately, but a touring car, a front-wheel drive touring car, really reliant on getting your tyres into the right operating window. If the rear tyres are too cold, if the front tyres don't have the right amount of pressure in them, you will not get a good lap time out of it. And I jumped into the practice server actually last week. I was nowhere near the top of the times, needless to say, but even I could tell that it took 2 to 3 laps to get yourself into a position where you could really push. But these being front-wheel drive cars, Jack, you only have limited tyre life. That front left tyre, especially around a circuit like this one, the clockwise circuit, really takes some punishment. So actually, the window of opportunity you have to set a good time is not that large.
No, exactly, and Portimao is a relatively long circuit, and it's very testing on the tyres like you just mentioned. So, you know, a nearly 2-minute lap, you're torturing those tyres going up and down the hills, heavy braking zones, dealing with the G-forces, and of course front-wheel drive. They torture the front tyres regardless, no matter what circuit you're whether it's Silverstone, Brantatch or Portimao. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of tyre management. We know a couple of the drivers out there are really good at that, i.e. Eric Axelsen. But Kyle Felvers, who's normally a bit of a hybrid, he's a nice in-between of an aggressive Nicky Taylor and a conservative Eric Axelsen. I think he's got a lot to learn in those front-wheel drive machines, and he seems to have learned quite a lot since the last time as well. If you remember back, Andy, he used to always hate, he always used to go on about it in interviews, how much he hates the front-wheel drive. I don't think we can allow him that excuse anymore, because he is flying out there.
Yeah, no, certainly. He really seemed to gel with front-wheel drive in our last touring car European Tour, which was a one-make championship for the Cooper. It had hybrid, it had lots of different tyre compounds. But Kyle Felvers was a 2-time race winner that season. He ended up finishing, I think, 3rd in the points. So Kyle Felvers is a lot better at front-wheel drive now than he used to be. Another man who is very good at front-wheel drive, though, is this man, Jack Smith. And Smith, I expect, to be a front-runner in this series. He comes across the line and actually stays in 9th place. 9th place now as Elliot Dalton jumps ahead of him. Nearly a full second off pole, which is held by Felvers, Joel Laskin, Scott Bugner are next. Then in 4th position is Paolo Tempera, one of many drivers who are new to racing. Certainly haven't come across them before on the VRRC service. He is 4th, ahead of Elliot Dalton against Verhoeven, Nicky Taylor. 8th position then for Oliver Gibson. 9th, Jack Smith, a bit further down than you might expect. And 10th place, Nathan Blank. But remember, even though this is the first round of the championship, Jack, we don't have any success ballast yet, but we do still have the VRRC handicap weight system in play. And Jack Smith in particular, being one of our top drivers here at the VRRC, may just be suffering from that.
Yeah, he hasn't been around for a few championships, so that hasn't diminished his rating on the VRRC. He's still one of the top drivers that's listed on that Excel spreadsheet, and that's why he's probably behind what I believe is his brother, Rich was telling me, Oliver Gibson. I'm actually looking over to Rich since he's in the same building as me. He's actually not concentrating on me at all, so I can't get confirmation of whether it is his brother, but I think it is. Oliver Gibson, who's currently in 8th place. It's nice to see the Smart 5 cars back on the grid, to be honest. It has been a little bit of a while, but they're one of the cars that's instantly recognisable, whereas everybody else has had a bit of a livery change.
Yes, and I've noticed this. HFT like to do this to us all the time, don't they? Subtly change their paint scheme every season, and a lot of the other drivers who do this independently have completely free choice. And many of the drivers do design their own paint schemes as well before every season. So, yeah, keeps us on our toes, takes us the first couple of races to figure it out, and we've got a lot more of them to try and figure out here, this being such a big grid. 21 drivers, Ethan Hill not setting a time, as we've seen. We've had 20 drivers complete lap times. Andy Carroll there jumping into 7th. He's pretty handy in a touring car, as we've seen in the past, and he jumps inside of the top 10. But there, Oliver Gibson goes 3rd, Jack Smith goes 6th, and the Smart 5 drivers, interestingly, Jack, have gone for different cars, haven't they? Gibson in the Audi and Smith in the Hyundai, but they are both getting quicker.
Yeah, and I have had confirmation that they are brothers as well, so that's an even more sort of interesting dynamic about which ones are they going to race each other full on? Are they going to work together in the races? Are they just going to go full on touring cars against each other? We'll have to wait and see, but I am glad that they've gone for different cars. Maybe that'll show us a little bit of rivalry early on before we've even got into the race. Carl Velvis, though, still top of times. Joel Last, very quick. He loves the front wheel drive, does Joel, doesn't he? He was fairly quick in the Mazdas, but a little bit inconsistent. Well, he's in second place at the moment, and I'm sure after this qualifying performance, he's probably going to be thinking there's a potential championship place on the podium for me in this championship if he can get his act together through all of the 8 rounds. That's going to be the key for Joel, isn't it? Because he has shown really good pace.
Yes, but again, Joel was quick last time we raced in touring cars, where he won a couple of races in the hybrid championship. So you're right, he is good at this kind of racing. He's good at lots of kind of racing, but I do expect him to be a front runner. Speaking of drivers I expect to be a front runner, Josh Martin is 16, a second and a half off pole. Now, in some of our other championships that we've covered together, Jack, a second and a half off pole would still put you inside the top half dozen or so, but you cannot afford to be even slightly off the pace here, otherwise you will find yourself well down the order. There may be 4 tenths between Kyle Felvis and Joel Lask at the moment, but from last all the way back to Paul Laramie in 15th place is only another second. So Josh Martin a little off the pace, further back than you'd expect, but in theory he doesn't have to find a huge amount of time to improve his grid position.
And you know, if we were at Silverstone National or if we were at Brands Hatch Indy, that wouldn't be that surprising to see the top 15 separated by about a second. But here at a 1 minute 56 lap, 1 minute 51 lap, that's a huge amount of people to fit into such a small time window, isn't it? It's brilliantly competitive, it seems. And another driver who I would say out of position, who you've commentated on a lot this season in real life, Andy, is Chris Shepherd. Just below Josh Martin, if I'm not mistaken, is that the TCR driver?
I think you may be confusing him for Adam Shepherd.
Adam,
I'm grateful isn't here because Adam and I have had a complicated relationship this year as far as commentators' curses go. But maybe a relation, who knows? It would make sense. He's in a Hyundai, after all, which is the same kind of car that Adam Shepherd races in TCR UK. But yes, Chris Shepherd, 17th at the moment, just behind Alec Iyengar, who is a real-world racer, having competed in F1000 for the last few years. There we go, Chris Shepherd knew we were talking about him and jumps into 13th place as the checkered flag is out. So those who now cross the line and see the checkered flag, that is their session done. Ethan Hill still struggling to get a lap in. He's gone back out on track, but stops and gets going again. He is not going to improve upon 21st, so he is already one of our high-profile drivers, I would say, to find himself struggling. The same is true of Josh Martin, and also Nicky Taylor. Nicky Taylor is only 12th fastest, slower than Jens Verhoeven. Now, those two have both been running with HFT-affiliated teams of late, and normally Nicky is the faster of the two.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still reeling from getting Chris and Adam Shepherd mixed up. So I was convinced for the last 7 seasons of VRRC that I had that lined up, but obviously not. Jens Verhoeven, coming across the line, not improving, stays in 9th place. But you're absolutely right, Nicky Taylor, since he is a front-wheel drive, real-life racer, we would expect him to be well within the top 10 in these TCR cars. But maybe the strength of the field is that competitive. Now, Nicky Taylor's going to have to do some fighting, but we know how much he loves to fight in a front-wheel drive car. He'll go forward, he'll make things happen, and I'm sure if we stick our cameras on him, he will be exciting to watch. As Eric Axelson comes across the line, he's currently well within the top 5 in 4th place, but he can't improve to get up ahead of Oliver Gibson for the time being. Nathan Blank is having a little bit of a sedate cruise around the Portimao circuit, it seems here, taking in the virtual views.
Indeed he is. A very relaxing way of life in Portugal, I've heard, and Nathan very much embracing that. He's pulled over at the side of the road, hasn't yet seen the checkered flag, but clearly his session is over. Right then, we're going to take a quick break before we dive into race number 1 and have a chat with our Our first qualifying session has been completed, the VRRC Touring Car Trophy here at the Portimao circuit in Portugal. It is Kyle Felvers who has managed to get himself on pole position. Kyle, championship contender in our most recent championship in the MX-5s, and he's off to a flying start in the TCR cars. Kyle is in the commentary box with us now. Big congratulations, you've got that pole position, a perfect start to the season, and you're gelling, it seems, with this car, which hasn't always been the case when you've jumped into a front-wheel drive car.
Yeah, TCR front-wheel drive cars don't usually suit me very well, but this one I seem to be just clicking with, and it's going well so far.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that has worked out absolutely perfectly for you, the qualifying session, and with such a big grid as well. More important start the front of the field, isn't it?
Yeah, to get pole by 0.4 of a second here gives me good confidence going into the race. There's something like 21 of us in this race, so reverse grid is going to be the most interesting reverse grid we've ever had at VRRC, I think.
Yeah, that's the point, actually, because we're still doing the full reverse grids, aren't we? So that second race is going to be chaotic. All more important then to try and bank some points in race one.
Yeah, race one is going to be very key. We're going to just try and keep first and try and stay up there and stay steady, and then work for the reverse grid.
0.4 of a second, good advantage in qualifying, given how close it is further back. Do you expect that to translate into a similar sort of advantage over the course of a race? Because tyre management in these cars is tricky.
Yeah, tyre management will be tricky. The tyres sort of drop off quite quickly, so I think that should catch a lot of people out, and hopefully the pace will be able to just pull me through and keep me at the front.
Excellent stuff. Sounds like a plan, Kyle. We'll let you go and make your final preparations, but congratulations, first pole position of the season.
Thank you very much.
So there is Kyle Felvers, even, on the pole position for this first race. Jack, I will now bring you in. Excellent start to his season, that, isn't it?
It is, and it's nice to see that he's gelling with a front-wheel drive car and openly admitting it on air as well. It's we're taking good progress with Kyle, aren't we? Hopefully, the rest of his HFT teammates can actually gel with it as well, and we may see some good teamwork from them, like we did in the Mazdas. I can't remember the particular track, but a couple of rounds from the end where Kyle was quick and Nicky was quick, and they were trying to work together to try and get those podiums and lock out an HFT front row and all those sort of things. That can be really important when you get to the sharp end of a championship, to have those teammates who are willing to put in the hard work for you, basically. And I think HFT have got those drivers around them, so I think they're going to be strong here, like per usual. But as we said, the SmartFi drivers are back. They're going to be probably putting on a bit of a show for us. I think we've got lots of things that will culminate into what will hopefully be a very competitive championship. You already mentioned about the full reverse grid for race number 2. That's going to be chaotic. I don't think there's anybody here who doesn't think that that's not going to be chaotic.
Yeah, especially because those first few corners here at Portimao are particularly treacherous, aren't they? You drop down that hill into a very sharp right-hander at turn 1. Turn 2 is okay, but then it really comes back on itself through turn 3. So a real pinch point through those first couple of corners, and that will certainly provide action. Actually, not just in race 2, but I think the start at race 1 here, Jack, could be really, really crucial. It's not always the easiest thing to get a front-wheel drive car off the line.
No, and we saw it in the MX-5. I know it's not front-wheel drive, but Eric Axelsson, he got a knack of that nobody else could seem to do. And as you just mentioned, it's harder in a front-wheel drive car. So if someone does get that knack, it is going to be a massive advantage for going into turn 1 here at Portimao, and pretty much any of the circuits. Spa in particular, obviously, it's not the longest run into turn 1, but particularly if you can get 1 or 2 cars up the inside, then you've got a nice run all the way up Eau Rouge and everything like that. So, yeah, it's exciting to see who's done the most practice, who's practiced those race starts, what kind of tyre temperatures are they able to get? Are they able to hold on to the tyres for the full 20 minutes? We'll have to wait and see. Like you mentioned in the build-up, there's no double distance races anymore, Andy, so they don't have to complain about that next week.
Indeed so, which is a relief for us all. What a brilliant sight that makes. A big grid, 21 cars, hopefully, if Ethan Hill has made it out there for the start of this first race of the evening. Then 20 minutes the distance, and as Jack said, we take the full finishing order from this race and revert it to give us the grid for race number 2. It's Kyle Felvis on the right on pole position, Joel Laskin the Hyundai alongside him, Audi and Hyundai on row 1, and then another Audi of Oliver Gibson with Eric Axelson's Lincoln Co. alongside him. Red lights on, then rev start to rise, out they go. We're away racing in the VRRC European Tour, and look at that, they're scrabbling for grip from the front-wheel drive cars as they race towards the first corner. It looks as though Kyle Felvis from pole position will hold on to the advantage. Lask on the inside will stay in second position. In fact, grid order for the top 3 or 4. There, it's 2 by 2 further back in the pack. Here comes the Smart 5 car of Gibson. Up the inside of Joel Lask for second place. He hops over the curb, almost gets into the back of the Hyundai through turn number 3, but Joel Lask will just about hang on. Scott Bugner has had a good start as well. He's into the top 5 and is challenging Axelson heading towards turn number 5.
Yeah, it was fascinating stuff there. Oliver Gibson and Joel Lask smashed the front curb at the first curb. That put upset him. That allowed Oliver Gibson to put his nose up the inside, and then he smashed the second curb, and it put him offline and off centre as well. And Joel Lask just about held on. Here comes Eric Axelsson though against Scott Bugner on the inside. Who's the last of the late breakers? Eric Axelsson, we know, is so smooth with his throttle and brake inputs, and he just about holds on to the 5th place for the time being. He wasn't as aggressive, but we are quite often used to seeing Eric Axelsson playing a slightly longer game, aren't we? He's hunkered up behind Scott, who's back in the championships. It's nice to see him. It's always nice to see him in VRRC, and hopefully he'll be here for the entire season as well. He's already come on strong, running in the top 4. He might not have the pace to catch up Oliver Gibson and Joel Lask, as we see one of the cars, as one of the Coopers in the background. Andy Carroll, unfortunately, going off. It's one of the Juliettas, actually.
It is the alpha-shaped Cupra going over the grass on the inside line there. Andy Carroll dropping to the back of the field, and then Paul Laramie, I think that was, running wide just behind him into the braking zone towards the end of the lap. It looks as though we have not seen Ethan Hill, unfortunately, so 20 cars taking the start, and some brilliant side-by-side action further back there. Nicky Taylor up the inside of Chris Shepherd, who has gained a couple of places from where he started. 12th in the running order he is, as they come around the final corner. So a very entertaining opening lap is in the book, and Kyle Felvis, 1.2 seconds up the road already. Someone bailing for the pit lane. Who is that? It was one of the Hondas. Alok Iyengar, that is. We saw him having a spin in qualifying, and then someone else blasting in behind him. Sam Zero, that was. Those two heading for the pit lane. Damage, Jack, or possible penalties?
Well, potential jump start. We've seen that before, haven't we? And that is hit with a straight stop and go penalty, I think it is. So, or even just a pit lane penalty. They have to go drive through. Sorry, not pit lane. Ooh. Big contact there. Who was that between? Josh Martin managed to get through on Nathan Blank, Eddie Preston, Andy Carroll, I think, were involved as well. There is Josh Martin running around the outside of Nathan Blank. This is what you were talking about with that midfield. So important to qualify at the front, isn't it, Andy? Because there's just such a melee further back as Josh Martin sends one on the inside of Jens Verhoeven, heavy on the brakes, and gets the car nicely turned.
Yeah, absolutely. But as someone gets fired out of line, that was Nathan Blank, I think. Yeah, Nathan Blank is off the road, and he is not going to be scoring many points out of this race. I don't think he made the barriers, but he's going to rejoin right at the back of the field there behind John Jones. Only those two who pitted, Alok Iyengar and Sam Zero, are behind, and we're getting confirmation now they both received penalties for jumping the start. So Jack was absolutely on the money. Lots of changing towards the front of the field as well. Eric Axelsson is back ahead of Scott Bugner now for 4th position. Jack Smith was closing in on that group too. But behind them, it is all so close because, Jack, everyone is capable of running about the same sort of lap time from, what, 2nd back to 14th. There was less than 1/10 of a second between each individual position. So very hard to get past people who are running the same pace as you, and often you all sort of end up on top of each other.
Yeah, and it's a difficult position to be in, but you've got to try and move forward. You've got to try and score points early in the season, but equally, it's important that you do score the points. It depends on how you enunciate that sentence, depends on how aggressive you are, basically. At the end of the day, finishing is much more important. Now, was there a Smart 5 car going into the pit lane? There is Oliver Gibson. Not sure why that one is. It's another jump start, Rich has just told me.
Yes, it is. So there we go. Another jump start. He's made a good start, didn't he? And was on his toes through the first couple of corners. He moved into a podium place, but he's in the pit lane now, and that's one of Smart 5's expected front runners now running at the back. But that puts a quick driver further down the field, and that could be important for race 2. Now look at this. Eric Axelsson getting his elbows out. Contact there with Scott Bugner, and Jack Smith is sensing an opportunity for a podium here. He's on the inside of Bugner. The two Hyundai Elantras running door to door down the hill, and on the inside line it will be Jack Smith who goes 4th, they're down to 5th, and Eric Axelsen having the fight of his life here to hang on to a podium place.
Yeah, I think Jack Smith, he hasn't been around Eric Axelsen for a couple of seasons. He probably think he was going to be a bit of a lying, sort of take this line down, but it's no longer is the case for Eric Axelsen. He's one of the big boys in VRRC. 2 championships under his belt in the 2 consecutive championships as well, might I add. He's not going to take this line down at all. He's getting his elbows out. He's forcing people into positions where he wants them, able to get through. He's in 3rd place, but look at the pace that Carl Felvers and Joel Laskers are pulling out there. Carl Felvers just set a purple Sector 1. Not that, I'd say it's very impressive from Carl Felvers, but realistically, everybody else is falling over each other. They're not going to be setting any quick times, meaning he can just pull away.
Indeed so, although interestingly, in the first sector on this lap, it looks as though Joel Lask is sort of matching him, although in the middle part of the lap, the gap is going back out again to around 1.7 seconds, so you're not missing anything at the front of the field. This is the battle. It's a long train of TCR cars for 3rd place. The Lincoln Co. of Eric Axelsen, the Hyundais of Jack Smith and Scott Bugner, the Golf of Andy Dorman, the only Golf on the grid, I think, and yet that car is right up there. Then you've got Paolo Tempera's Honda, and not a huge gap back actually to Elliot Dalton Ayres either, so we've got a big group of cars. That's another Honda for Dalton Ayres, incidentally, and proving the point here, Jack, that these cars are very evenly matched.
Yeah, I don't think anybody can have any complaints because we're watching it now. The proof is in the pudding. It's so closely matched. They're just basically punching holes in the air for each other. The slipstream is where the advantage is for the drivers behind Eric Axelsen, and even it looks brilliant, doesn't it? I think this is easily one of the best championships, and well, aesthetically best looking championships for VRRC in quite a while. I know Rich has been hesitant to put a multi-car championship together or multi-manufacturer championship together for quite some time, but to be honest, for me, I'm a big fan already. Absolutely,
I love one-make racing. There is definitely a place for one-make racing, but this is the great thing about things like TCR or GT3 or GT4. The fact that the cars are so comparable in performance, that means that you can give the drivers the choice of car, but still retain the really close racing. And look how close it is for 3rd place. Eric Axelsen is not having an easy time of it here. The Lincoln Co driver with his now traditional dark green paint scheme on the car, hanging on to 3rd, but Jack Smith, as you said, on his competitive return to the VRRC, is looking every bit as fast as the double reigning VRRC champion, dropping down the hill then towards the end of another lap. This will be the end of lap number 4. And Axelsen not going to be able to escape. Is he managing the tyres here? It doesn't look like it, does it? And I do suspect that within the next 5 or 6 minutes, those who have been punishing the tyres might start to feel that.
Yeah, I would expect so as well. We've already mentioned Portimao is a punishing circuit, even if you are the smoothest of drivers. Just a quick shout out to a driver who I'm loving right now is Andy Dorman. I think Andy's probably the first to admit he's not always a front runner, but he's been there. He's there on merit in 6th place. He's absolutely flying, isn't he? He's not been pumped back. He's absolutely on the money in terms of waiting for a mistake of the drivers ahead of them. He's seen them battle so hard. They've gapped themselves just a touch now. But you know, Andy, that within the next 12 minutes, there's going to be another fight. There's going to be another spark, something that is going to slow these drivers up, and all of a sudden they're going to bunch back up.
You're absolutely right, because I don't think Eric Axelsen has the ultimate pace. Usually that only gets worse as these races go on, particularly in a front-wheel drive car. But yeah, Andy Dorman doing an excellent job. I think the last time we saw Andy race was probably in the Civic Cup, was it not? I'm just digging back my... he actually didn't have a podium that season, but he did have a pole position, so perhaps a bit of a front-wheel drive specialist again. And he's in the Golf, which is the smallest of the TCR cars, the most like a Civic Cup car, ironically more so actually than the Civic TCR car is, so perhaps not that surprising that that car suits his driving style. The shorter wheelbase car's probably a little bit more twitchy on corner entry, but changing direction really well, and that Golf is running superbly here in 6th place, so good spot that, Jack. He is just dropping back slightly from the Axelsen, Smith and Bugler trio, but that's really because they stopped battling for pretty much the first time in 9 minutes.
Yeah, and maybe they're focusing on moving further forward. I mean, Joel Lask was pulling away with ease. Carl Felvers was pulling away from all of them with ease as well. I mean, he's got a 3-second gap now to the second-place driver, but Joel will be fairly happy, I think, in this first race of the season just to take away a second place, especially if it is, in air quotes, as easy as he's making it look at the moment. I think, to be honest, if I was the likes of Jack Smith, I probably wouldn't be thinking about going for second place. I'd probably just be thinking about getting past Eric Axelsen. I know that's not probably the most sensible thing, the wisest thing, But that is exactly what I'd be thinking if I was in the driving seat of that 4th place car right now. I wouldn't want Bugner to attack me. I've got the pace to get past Eric, so let me have a go.
And interestingly there, Smith was way quicker off the final corner. He's got to the inside and goes into 3rd place. So Jack Smith into 3rd position, then runs out wide though, and Axelsen will get straight back up the inside, and that might even allow Scott Bugner through into 4th position. He's on the outside line in the Laser Tools Racing Hyundai. He's got the inside line now for turn 4. Very easy to understeer wide, which he does. He gives the hip check there to Smith, and here comes Dorman up the inside of the 1 Hyundai, 2 Hyundais nearly. He's certainly going to gain 1 position. Can he break into 4th? Well, Bugner defends the inside line. The Golf goes to the outside. Watch for the switchback, scrabbling for traction as they accelerate out of the hairpin at turn 5. Axelsen stays 3rd, but Bugner goes 4th. Andy Dorman into the top 5.
Yeah, Jack Smith had to go for it. Probably he was listening to me on the way down to turn 1, wasn't he? But I doubt it, to be honest. I doubt anybody out there is listening to me. But, you know, he tried it. He went too deep, ran a little bit wide. But Dorman, like I said before, was there to pick up the scraps. And that's what I'm looking from him right now. Right in there, getting in the thick of it, not being afraid to mix it with these top-tier drivers.
Do not have to be on the ultimate pace to do well in this kind of racing, because it is so hectic, it is so close. If other drivers start to battle, then you can pick up the pieces. That's exactly what Dorman did. But now, of course, Jack Smith, who is arguably a bit quicker than him, is stuck behind, lunges to the inside. That was a really good touring car move. I think there was some contact on the apex. There's definitely contact on the exit, but Jack Smith bullies his way through and gets back into that 5th place. And this will be a fired up Jack Smith now, because having not qualified quite as well as we expected, he was looking like he had podium potential, but that little bit of contact that he had with Scott Bugner through the first few corners of this lap and put him down the order again, and he will want to get back onto the tail ultimately of Eric Axelsen. But first of all, needs to try and close in on Scott Bugner. On board with Andy Dorman though, and look at the run that the Golf has had out of that final corner. Pulls alongside to the outside line down into turn number 1, steeply downhill. Don't get on that curb too much, easy to lock up the brakes, but Dorman manages to get through the corner much more quickly than the Hyundai. Peaks to the inside through turn number 2. There's almost an overlap. Is there a dive on the brakes? No, just about. Jack Smith hangs on. This is brilliant racing.
Yeah, desperation isn't the right word, but asserted enthusiasm, I think, from Jack Smith on Andy Dorman. He was desperate to get past and then to catch up to Eric Axelsen, because he knew that Eric was going to pull away, and with 8 minutes to go, there's always an opportunity. Oh, big move on the inside by the Golf. That's Andy Dorman sending one on Jack Smith. The door definitely was open, and we didn't quite get the move done, but it's that sort of assertion. He's not waiting to pick up the scraps, is he, Andy? He's there to cook the feast himself.
Yes, because he can also see that Paolo Tempera is now arriving on his tail. Look, the yellow Honda, yellow and purple Honda, and he's bringing with him, to an extent, Elliot Daltonaires as well. So this is now less about the fight for 3rd and more about the fight for 5th, isn't it, really? Because Jack Smith and Andy Dorman, as they battle, they're being caught by the cars behind and being gapped by the cars ahead. Dorman back on the inside. He's lost the rear as he turns into the corner. That's very easily done there, braking on a turn, and the Golf not the most stable under braking, and that loses him time on the exit. Tempera's up the inside, and he will now try and outbrake the Golf, but Andy Dorman is good on the brakes. We've seen that already, and he just about hangs on for now.
It is all kicking off here at Portimao, isn't it? We quite often think the first race in these 220-minute events is a little bit calmer, Andy, because we've obviously had that qualifying that sets the pace, and people are sort of where they deserve to be. That's not the case anymore, is it, for this TCR series, and long may it continue.
Absolutely. I mean, they're where they ought to be. The trouble is that within a couple of tenths either side could be a difference of 3 or 4 places. So, yes, you start where you ought to be, but everyone around you is capable of running your lap times as well. So a slight mistake or a slight fumble in the battle can really lose you a lot of momentum and ultimately back you up into the group of cars behind, as is happening now for Smith, because Dorman and Tempera are right on his boot lid, whereas Scott Bugner and Eric Axelsen have pulled away. Bugner's 2 seconds clear, sorry, 1.5 seconds clear of Jack Smith now, and Axelsen 2 seconds up the road from him. Dorman with another good exit there out of turn number 4. That Golf seems to get off the corners really well, and he's going to look to the inside again here. He had a dress rehearsal of this move a lap ago, gets to the apex first, but the momentum on the outside line might just keep Jack Smith ahead.
Yeah, I think it has just about done that as well. Jack Smith sort of knows the tricks of the trade, doesn't he? Even though he's been away for a little bit, he's coming back and he's just starting to remember, starting to get into the groove of it. His racecraft is pretty unparalleled, I'd say. He's won a fair few championships with VRRC, I believe, so he's definitely one that knows, as I said, where to put the car at certain points on pretty much every single track in every single car as well. So we expect Jack to be running strong and doing exactly what he's doing. Even when there's pressure to be absorbed, he's absorbing it like a sponge. Dorman's doing a brilliant job, but he's not quite able to get the move to stick for the time being, and it looks like there's a little bit of a gap, Andy. We're opening up between those two drivers. Maybe Jack Smith can focus his attention forward on Scott Bugner. You also mentioned that last week you jumped into the practice server to have a little bit of a go in some of these TCR cars. One thing I want to ask is, did you notice any slipstream effect? How strong was the slipstream, I guess, if you sort of experienced it at all?
Yes, actually I did, because about the only driver who I could keep up with was Rich Hayden, and even then only for a couple of laps. So myself and Rich did run some laps together, and yes, it's actually surprisingly powerful. Down that main straight, you really do get a good tow, and especially if you've had a good exit from the final corner, that can really, really close people together. So yeah, you can definitely come from a car length or so back going onto this pit straight, and get alongside them going into the first corner. Chris Shepherd here trying to do exactly that to Paul Laramie. Shepherd's had a bit of a moment somewhere because he was running inside the top dozen earlier on. He's down to 14 now, but trying to find a way past Paul Laramie. Hasn't quite been able to do it yet. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That slipstream is definitely effective. It's also very, very tempting to just roll into some of these corners, especially at Portimao, and give the bumper to the car ahead. I don't know if that's just because it was Rich that I was chasing and I had this sudden urge to boot him out of the way, but when in a touring car, it's oh so tempting to use those bumpers.
Yeah, I imagine he would have taken it like a champ and did exactly the same thing to you, Andy, as well. Right. So, because that, like you said, this is touring car action, and we've already seen, you know, sort of, as you like to call it, a hip and shoulder moves into certain corners and on exit corners as well. Running people out wide, hanging them out to dry is what we used to call them for go-karting sort of thing, where you're taking your racing line, and if there appears to be a car on the outside of it, well, then that's unlucky for them sort of manoeuvre, and that's the sort of thing that has made people fall in love with touring cars for oh so many years.
Indeed, it's a great spectator sport, isn't it? Drivers can sometimes get a little bit frustrated when they're on the receiving end of it, but I think there's a way of having that sort of touchy-feely touring car racing without it getting silly, and that's pretty much what we've seen in this race. We've seen a little bit of side-to-side contact, but generally speaking, some really, really good driving standards. One driver who hasn't had any contact with anyone, as far as I know, is Kyle Felvers. He'd have a hard job having contact with someone because he's 6.5 seconds up the road. Here comes Nicky Taylor, meanwhile, trying to get up the inside of Elliot Dalton-Ayres. We will try and show Kyle Felvers before the broadcast, before the race is over. But for now, we've got some battling further back. Taylor up the inside of Dalton-Ayres and breaking through into 8th position. Jens Verhoeven is going to try and follow him through as well if he can. Let's get them through turn 3. Well, here comes another attack on the inside from Dalton-Ayres. That was really brave on the brakes, and I think he might have just overdone it slightly, but this is good racing.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of a contact on the rear end, and I think Elliot Dalton-Ayres has been forced behind Jens Verhoeven. We really do want to show our race leaders, both first and second, but the problem is Carl Felvers' teammate has been far too entertaining, like we always call him. It's Nicky Taylor who's stealing the spotlight at the moment in 8th place, and that battle seems to have died down between himself and Elliot Dalton-Ayres, but Elliot Dalton-Ayres is still in the thick of it with Jens Verhoeven, and yeah, that was a very exciting bit of action for those guys. But like we've always said, we do enjoy a feisty Nicky Taylor as he fights forward. Here is his teammate, Kyle Felvers, and in blissful isolation, I would say, Andy, if really he's rolling it back to COVID times, isn't he, trying to get that social distancing going.
Indeed, yeah, I'd almost forgotten Carl was in this race, actually. So far ahead is he? 7 seconds up the road. And this is all the more impressive, given what we've been saying all night long so far. Everyone is so evenly matched. The cars are so evenly matched. So for Kyle to have probably the most dominant race one victory, it seems. He's got a lap to do yet. I won't put the commentator's curse on him just yet. But if he does manage to win this race by 7 or 8 seconds, that is going to be a seriously impressive feat. So big congrats here to Kyle Felvers. He is showing everyone else a clean pair of heels and has been simply uncatchable. But can he repeat that from a reversed grid in race 2? We shall wait and see. Meanwhile, we might unfortunately have to break away from him again because the gap for second place has shot right down. Joel Lask has been caught, look, by Eric Axelson. Some good late race pace from Eric, which really we should have expected.
Yeah, but I also think that there was about a 6-second gap between Felvers and Lask, and that's been extended to 7.5 seconds. And all of a sudden, the gap between second and third has shrunk. So I think Joel Lask has potentially had some kind of problem, whether he's not completely spanned, but gone wide, or had a couple of poor corners, overheated the tyres or something. I'm not entirely sure. But what it has done is allowed Eric Axelson to have one last go at this, isn't it? One last lap to really put the pressure on Joel Lask and try and swap those podium positions around.
Yeah, indeed. Eric Axelson was not a double champion here at the VRRC by accident. He knows what he's doing and perhaps has been playing the long game. I suggested earlier on that perhaps his lack of pace was because he was saving the tyres. One thing I have noticed from the Assetto Corsa TCR cars especially, the harder you push them in the early stages, the earlier you will start to come across overheating issues with the tyres. It's not so much wear, it's the fact that that left front tyre starts to get way too hot. And so perhaps Axelson, by just reining it in the early stages, is now able to find some grip in the latter stages. He closes right in on Joel Lask behind. Look, you've got Bugner, Smith and Dorman running nose to tail. But are we going to see a change here for second position? Well, Joel Lask, I think, should be okay now. Unless he makes a mistake through these final couple of corners, it should be second for Joel Lask, third for Eric Axelson. But a dominant performance, about as dominant a performance as we've ever seen here at the VRRC for Kyle Felvers. It's Audi victorious in the first race of the VRRC Touring Car Cup, and Kyle Felvers, Mr. I don't like front wheel drive, has just shown everyone else how it's done. Joel Lask second, Eric Axelson in third position. Decent recovery that from Axelson, actually. He seemed to be struggling in the early stages. And Scott Bugner just about fends off Jack Smith and Andy Dorman and Paolo Tempera for that fourth position. Elliot Dalton-Ayres there with Josh Martin side by side. Dalton-Ayres really dropped back towards the end, didn't he? Perhaps running into tyre difficulties. And Josh Martin gets himself into the top 10. Kyle Felvers may have dominated that race, Jack, but that doesn't really do that race justice.
No, absolutely. There was battles abound, shall we say, for third place, fifth place, all the way down 8th place. It's what we like to see from such thick, juicy grids, shall we say, where they're so full of action because they're so full of drivers who are along the same sort of pace line that we've been saying all along. What I will say is, if you are a Kyle Felvers fan, enjoy the P1. I'm going to say enjoy it while it lasts, not because he's a slow driver, but because those reverse grid races can really bite you in the backside. So let's, fingers crossed, everybody keeps it clean and we see some really good racing. But first of all, we're going to have a very quick advert.
Race number one complete here at Portimao for the VRRC Touring Car Championship. And, well, it was won comprehensively by Kyle Felvers. Kyle joins us in the commentary box now. Kyle, starting on pole position, we said 20 minutes ago, was a great place to be. It gave you an advantage going into the race, but we didn't necessarily expect that sort of advantage. That was seriously impressive.
Yeah, like I said in qualifying, just wanted to keep it clean and use the pace that I had and try and pull away, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I mean, you make that sound a lot easier than it was. It's not easy to gap the field like that. Yes, there was some battling behind you, but what was the game plan there? Did you just push really hard from the start, or was it actually a case of, looking after the tyres early? Because your pace in the second half of the race seemed just as good as it was in the first half.
Yeah, I saw right at the start, I saw Oliver Gibson go to the outside of Joel, and I knew they'd be side by side, so I sort of relaxed into turn one, because I knew I wouldn't have anyone side by side, and then for the rest of the race, I sort of just tried to keep it easy and not make any mistakes.
Which you did. You looked sublime. We didn't see a lot of you during that race, I must say, but when we did see you, you looked nice and smooth and tidy and like it was all under control. Race 2 is going to be a little bit less under control, I would imagine. What is the game plan here? You've got some nice points in the bag, but you need to make progress. You also need to stay out of trouble.
Yeah, I think just counter on people's mistakes, because inevitably people will be making mistakes. 20 cars in a reverse grid, everyone's out of position. It's always going to happen. There's going to be slight mistakes here and there, so just sort of try to capitalize on them.
Excellent stuff. It's going to be very entertaining to watch, and I'm sure we'll see a bit more of you during this second race than we did in race 1. But Kyle, congratulations on a truly dominant win.
Thanks, Andy.
Kyle Felvers then gets his season off to the perfect start. Jack, it wasn't a bad start, though, for our man in second place either.
No, Joel Lask, as impressive as Kyle's win was, it was almost as impressive as second place for you, actually. You had a massive gap at one point. What was your thought process of those first sort of 18 minutes of racing?
To be fair, I was trying to catch Carl, but he was just too quick. So I sort of left him to do his thing. And then I started to see Eric come up from behind me. I just managed to cook my tyres. I found it quite difficult to sort of keep them under wraps. So it's going to be interesting on this one.
I was going to say, we sort of saw that there was about a 6-second gap and you had a healthy lead to Eric Axelsson. Then we focused on battles further down for a few laps. And all of a sudden, the fight for second was heating up. Was that just a case of, like you said, your tyres overheating, or was there a couple of mistakes in there as well?
No, to be fair, I actually kept that one quite clean. It was just overheated tyres. They just absolutely cooked, it scrubbed into every corner. So yeah, it was lucky towards the end. I think if I'd had another lap, to be honest, Eric probably would have just got me, to be fair.
We saw you have a good pace at times in the MX-5. Would you say you're more of a front-wheel drive specialist over rear-wheel drive? Is the TCR something you prefer to be in?
I prefer them. It's just getting used to the car. I'm still so used to the MX-5s, so it's a completely different way of driving. Didn't have to worry about the tyres so much in the MX-5s. You can sort of find a pace and a rhythm with them, but I'll get used to it.
Well, I'm sure you've already got pretty used to it to start with, because second place in the first race of the season is nothing to be sniffed at. Congratulations, Joel, and hopefully we'll be speaking to you after race number 2.
Cheers.
Good stuff from Joel Lask then. Second place finish, and it's the third step of the podium for Eric Axelsson. Now, Eric, we sometimes see you a bit further down the podium in the reverse grid races, but it's been a while since you finished anything other than first in race 1 of the night. It's tough out there in the touring cars, isn't it?
Ah, yes, it is. It's yeah, the competition is fierce, and yeah, still happy with the P3 though in the first race. So yeah, it's hard.
It was an interesting race from you, actually, because in the first few laps, it looked like you were struggling, or you didn't quite have the pace of certainly Joel, who you eventually caught. So were you managing the tyres better than him, do you think, in the first part of the race, or was it just that you got sort of caught up battling people and that let him pull a bit of a gap on you?
Yeah, I think that was the case. I had Scott and Jack close behind me, and they are both really fast drivers, so I had to fight with them. So I think that's where I lost to Joel. But yeah, in the end, I managed to fend them off and get a gap myself. So still happy with P3.
Yeah, some good solid points. Good to see you on the podium as well. We'll perhaps be speaking to you again after race 2, but we'll let you go and prepare for that one now, Eric.
Hope so. Thank you, Andy.
So there we go. First race in the books, Jack. Plenty to talk about after that one, wasn't it? We're only about a minute away, I believe, from getting race number 2 underway. And if we thought race 1 was good, I suspect we haven't seen anything yet, because race number 2, full reversed grid. This could get very messy is the word I want to use, but let's go with spectacular and exciting instead.
Yeah, that's probably a better way of selling it to the sponsors, isn't it? I think it's definitely going to be a little bit dicey, shall we say? Race one was brilliant in so many ways, mainly because it was close, but it was fair as well. Like Kyle said, people make mistakes in race number 2. People get a bit overexcited from being at the front as well. What we don't want is people to rush this. Let's just take it calm for the first 2 laps and then make your moves.
It's like you've never seen one of these reverse grid races before,
Jack.
Let's see. They might listen. I'm sure Rich Hayden was telling them in the driver's briefing to behave themselves in race 2. Let's see what happens then. Alec Iyengar on pole position, Sam Zero alongside him, John Jones and Nathan Blank row 2, with Kenny Press and Oliver Gibson. He could be one to watch from the 3rd row. Remember, he was at the front in race 1 and then had that penalty. Lights out then, away they go. Pretty even the 2 front row starters. Nathan Blank is away well from 4th on the grid, and so is Josh Martin, middle of the field there. The green and white Lincoln Co. diving for the inside line. Into the first corner they go. Iyengar holds the lead. Second place is still Sam Zero. Someone is sideways in the middle of the pack though, and off they go. Andy Dorman involved. Paul Laramie, I think, was the first one to get turned. And poor old Andy Dorman, who was in the right place at the right time so often in race 1. The exact opposite is true at the start of the second race.
Yeah, and there's more contact, and that's Jack Smith gone the other way, and, well, he's not facing the correct way anymore. He needs to have a safe rejoin as we cut the cameras away. Hopefully nobody makes contact, because he was about to drive onto the racing line, but we'll focus a little bit further forward as Nathan Blank gets past John Jones. Elliot Dalton Ayres is moving up positions, Oliver Gibson as well. Loads of contacts in that rear end of the field, Andy. It's pretty much impossible to know where to look, because I think I just saw someone try and make it 4 wide, and that is potentially the inevitable conclusion of a 4 wide moment going up the hill.
Oh, it's still going on though. Oh no, Josh Martin had contact with Tempera, was that? I think it was. Verhoeven was involved in that too. Chris Shepherd, I think, got... There's a surprise. Chris Shepherd, I think, got sort of shepherded off the road there by the out-of-control Honda, and we are going for a dual safety car. That is a very good idea, I think, because that was all getting a little bit messy. It's almost like we predicted it, isn't it? Alec Iyengar held on to the lead, by the way. Good first half a lap from him there. Sam Zero still second as well, so... Actually, most of the drivers, I think that top 4 is still the same top 4 that we had on the grid. So in fairness to them, none of them dropped down the order at all in the first half a lap of racing. Nathan Blank 3rd, John Jones 4th, Oliver Gibson 5th. So he gained 1 position, but Josh Martin was the big winner in all of that. He had a really good start and then got involved in some of the contact later on, but he's still there in 6th, ahead of Elliot Dalton Ayres, Nicky Taylor, Paolo Tempera, and Scott Bugner. So it wasn't Tempera that I saw going off the road. I think it was Jens Verhoeven in the other yellow Honda.
Yeah, and just to clean up what's going to go on, I think there's 1 more lap in the safety car, so we're going to have a little bit longer to talk about what on earth just happened. Unfortunately, Ethan Hill hasn't been able to join us again due to connection issues. That's what took him out of qualifying, took him out of race 1. It's also taken him out of race 2 tonight, so unfortunately he's missed the entire first round as Ethan Hill. Chris Shepherd is also in the pits. Now, I believe he had to transport himself by using the hotkey on his keyboard, which means he's basically DNFing now. He's disqualified from the session, unfortunately. If you can't drive your car around to the pits, you do DNF. So we only have 19 cars left, which is a bit of a shame, but you're right, Josh Martin had an absolute electric start. Nicky Taylor's also in a decent position, I would say, in 8th place. That's exactly where he finished in race number 1. But Oliver Gibson, again, I think he just was biding his time. I'm interested to see how aggressive he goes now off the race restart. Does he try and get straight to the front as quickly as possible, now that a few of the slightly quicker drivers have caught up to the back of him?
Yes, I think he'll have to, really. We don't know what his race pace is like, though, do we? Because, okay, he was running inside the top 3 at the start of race 1, but had that penalty. We didn't really hear from him again after that. So whether he's going to have the pace to fend off the likes of front runners from race 1, we'll have to wait and see. But where are the front runners from race 1? Well, Axelsen is 11th, Lask is 12th, and Felber's 13th. So they made some progress, but not a huge amount of progress, if you see what I mean. So actually, Oliver Gibson, yes, he's got quick drivers behind him, but the drivers immediately behind him, Jack, are all people who he out-qualified pretty well.
Yeah, well, actually, if you look at Carl Felvis 13th, Lask, Axelson and Bugner, they're 13th up to 10th. That's exactly the same order as they sort of, well, it's reversed order of what they came on the podium sort of thing, isn't it? So they haven't actually gained that many positions. They've only gained positions because of people crashing out around them. So all they've done is keep their nose clean, and that has gifted them about 7 or 8 places. So that's exactly what Kyle wanted. It's probably exactly what Eric and all the rest of them wanted as well. I imagine they'll start getting their gloves off. Now, we've only got about 15 minutes to go once this VSC ends at the end of this lap.
Which is happening now. Certainly in Alec Iyengar's eyes, it's happened already because he's already accelerated and the VSC does now conclude. So with 15.5 minutes of the race to go, that is a brilliant restart from Alec Iyengar, who's hunting his first victory here on the VRRC. Sam Zero in second position, remember. Third, Nathan Blank. Fourth, John Jones. And in fifth position, the rapid Oliver Gibson. No overtaking until you cross the line. Well, actually, on a VSC restart, I suppose you can, but they are all single file. Then they start fanning out as they go over the top of the tabletop, start finish straight, and drop downhill into turn number 1. The first driver to make a move is Oliver Gibson. Round the outside of John Jones, who is sideways. Jones goes around. He tags Josh Martin. That looked like Elliot Dalton going wide in avoidance, and Axelson almost colliding with the stricken Audi as well. And that was, I think, quite how it started, but Jones was under attack from Oliver Gibson and unfortunately lost it through turn 1.
Yeah, well, all I know that there was a blue car who just absolutely sent it on the inside into turn 1. I think missed the braking zone. It was looking, oh, and there's a few people. It's had Josh Martin go for 2 moves in 1. I think he might have just tried to get it on a few cars behind. I can't actually see where they are on the timing screen, so I may have got that one a little bit wrong. I don't think anybody's actually come off that any worse for wear, but very ambitious moves early on in this restart.
That was Tempera and Bugner that he tried to go up the inside of, so that's the fight for 6th position. All of it happening behind Nicky Taylor, who has had a really good restart. Taylor came through all of that really well and is into the top 5. Already Iyengar is over a second of Sam Zero, so what we're seeing from Alok here is some really good pace when he's in clean air. Can he actually build up enough of a gap that when some of the really quick drivers come through, they aren't able to catch him? That virtual safety car might have helped him in that regard, because there are only 14 minutes of racing to go, and still some of our expected frontrunners, our frontrunners from race 1, are buried back in the pack. John Jones is pointing the wrong way for the second time in half a lap. Race 2 has really unravelled for the man who started on the second row of the grid. He gets the Audi going again, but rejoins right at the back of what is a very, very jumbled pack. Iyengar the leader, but everyone behind battling hard for position.
Yes, battling hard to survive, I think, more than they are positions at this point in the race, aren't we? But Lewis Edwards in our broadcast chat actually made a good point. That's the virtual safety car being out for what was pretty much a lap and a 2/3 of a lap. May well help the drivers who were cooking their tyres a little bit too much in the first race. And that allows them to basically keep going strong, keep putting in decent lap times until the very end of the race. The checkered flag comes out. So, yeah, we may well see a more consistent pace from all the drivers now, not just the likes of Kyle Felvis.
Yeah, I suspect you're right with that one, actually, and it is those early laps where you punish the tyres and then you really feel the effects of that later on in the race. But in the meantime, in this race, you really can't look after your tyres. You've got to go on the attack, and that's exactly what Nathan Blank is doing. Sam Zero, a little bit of a cork in the bottle here. He's not quite as quick as the cars behind him, and as they go side by side now, that will further entice the likes of Gibson and Taylor to join in the party. Up the hill they go then. The next corners are right-hander. In fact, the next 2 corners are right-handers. That favours the Audi, which stays in second place. Sam Zero ahead of Nathan Blank in the Aegon liveried Honda, and then we've got the Audi of Gibson and the Hyundai of Nicky Taylor, and it looked like Gibson was drawing level with the Honda as it dropped down the hill. Can't quite get it alongside it to the left-hander, but he'll have a much better run up the hill. But then the track goes right again, a really difficult braking zone here, and actually it's going to be Gibson who loses out, because up the inside goes Taylor, and he almost gets both of them, but there's contact with Nathan Blank. Nicky bounces over the grass, and Nicky Taylor actually still gets ahead of the Honda, which is under real assault now into the braking zone.
Yeah, it looked like they were going 3 wide, and they just about survived it. I don't know how they all didn't end up facing the wrong way, to be honest, but I'm glad they haven't. They're still trying to sort themselves out. Oliver Gibson is one of those drivers who I think I was expecting to see facing the wrong way to start, because there was that big contact, wasn't there, with Nathan Blank, who's really in the thick of it, and there's still more bumping and barging, shall we say, with him and Paolo Tempero, who really has got his elbows out since joining the VRRC. Here comes Josh Martin to take advantage of those two having a poor exit. Josh looking to get up into 7th place, and he'll be on the inside line as they almost go 3 wide just ahead of him into turn 1, but we'll focus on Josh Martin for the time being, and he gets that move secured on Paolo Tempera. Does he run wide? No, he doesn't. And Paolo doesn't have a gap of his inside to have another little lunge at him. A little bit further forward, Oliver Gibson on Scott Bugner is reigniting somewhat. And nice to see the Smart Fight cars. I've said it about 3 or 4 times so far this broadcast, but it's nice to see Oliver Gibson in the thick of it as well. Not just the likes of Jack Smith. Oliver just seems to be fairly rapid in these TCR cars. He's a fantastic addition to the championship.
He certainly is. This battle, though, has trouble written all over it, doesn't it? Because more and more cars are joining by the corner. That's Nicky Taylor up the inside of Sam Zero for 2nd place, but that's now the outside line into the right-hander. He chops across the nose of the Audi, though, and Taylor is through into 2nd place. Now he's, 3.6 seconds behind Alec Iyengar with just over half the race to go. So a Nicky Taylor victory could be on the cards here. There you saw Iyengar's Honda, then Hyundai, Audi, Hyundai, as they drop down the hill into the quick left-hander at the bottom of the dip. And who's the next one to make a move? It's Scott Bugner, who has picked his way nicely through this group. Haven't really mentioned Bugner that often in this race, Jack, but he's into a podium position.
Yeah, you're right. We haven't really mentioned this because he's been sort of on the outskirts of a lot of the melees. He's just been taking advantage as Oliver Gibson goes on the inside of Sam Zero, who I fear was a bit of a cork in the bottle in that 2nd place. He enjoyed his time in the limelight, but I think it's potentially going to go the other way for him now. But he's probably driven better in this race than we've seen him in many of the other MX-5 or any VRRC series that he's been involved in. I think he joined us for the MX-5 last time round. So yeah, maybe he's getting a little bit more composed. Maybe the racecraft is coming over to him, and in these TCRs, maybe he just feels a little bit more comfortable, but he's yet to find the ultimate pace.
Yeah, I agree with that. Meanwhile, Sam Zero continuing to slip backwards now because that's Nathan Blank coming alongside him. Now, these two are pretty evenly matched in race 1. They're evenly matched into turn 1. The Honda goes around the outside. The Audi pops over the curb, gets sideways. Actually, Zero does a good job there not to collide with the Honda, and he loses another place. Then here comes another Honda up the inside. That's Paolo Tempera. We know he's not backwards in going forwards. Dives up the inside, overshoots the corner slightly, but that gives him the inside for the next corner. Josh Martin buys into it all as well. Josh Martin up the inside of Zero, and then comes Felvers, then comes Dalton Ayres. Jack, if you get offline in this race, you're liable to lose 5 or 6 places in one go.
Oh, and I was about to continue on your point, but I think they're trying to lunge each other into the hairpin. And there's contact, Josh Martin. There's contact with Sam Zero as well, Paolo Tempera. Is everybody facing the right way? I'm trying to look at about 5 different places on the screen at any one time. Somehow, we've still got 18 drivers still rotating the circuit. Carl Felvis is in the thick of it as well. If you didn't like the fact that he didn't have a lot of screen time before, well, just you wait, because the next 8.5 minutes is going to be filled with a Carl Felvis pink Audi, I believe, because he is really in the thick of the action now.
Somebody, and I think it was Josh Martin, made it 3 wide into the hairpin. That is what they call in the business a low percentage move, Josh, and he's just made another one because he's gone wide with Sam Zero, and suddenly Kyle Felvers could be through into 6th position. No, Josh Martin's having none of it. Zero is sideways and collects Jack Smith. That was nearly disaster for Jack Smith, who has been overtaken by Eric Axelson a lap ago, by the way. I spotted that into this very corner. Sam Zero has, I think, 0 rubber left on his front tyres. He has been all over the place this last lap or so, and the Audi driver dropping to the back of the field. Iyengar leads. He has been caught by Nicky Taylor by about 1 second a lap at the moment. 2.5 seconds is the margin. Scott Bugner is sort of going with Nicky, but the gap is 3/4 of a second. Then Gibson 4th, Anki 5th, and Kyle Felvers there, and the race 1 winner up into 6th now.
Yeah, he's doing well, isn't he, Felvis? He was sort of been able to just read what was going on in front of him and not get too involved, but yet still take advantage. As Eric Axelson lunges on the inside of Elliot Dalton Ayres and makes another good move and secures another couple of points, I'm sure. Eric, he just needs to follow the likes of Carl Felvis, and getting a little bit of a nudge at the backside is not going to help into turn 2, but he managed to keep it up straight and narrow. Luckily, Elliot Dalton Ayres doesn't pursue the issue by pushing him on even further. I have to say, we didn't mention Carl Felvis when he was leading the race that much in race number 1, but it wasn't entirely surprising based off his qualifying pace. Eric Axelson getting very loose in the rear end. But I do want to give a special shout out to Aelok Iyengar and Andy. I mean, I know he's getting caught. His time in first place might be short-lived, but he has been there for 14 minutes nearly, and that, for a reverse grid, is very impressive.
It is, absolutely. He didn't show this speed earlier on, did he? But Aelok, like I said, he's a real-world racer. He's raced in F1000, which is the incredibly rapid motorcycle engine single-seater series that has been popular in the UK for a number of decades now, and he's been a race winner, I believe, in that championship, so he knows what he's doing. He's a good peddler. And actually, he's still 2 and a bit seconds up the road from Taylor. Taylor now has Bugner and Gibson on his tail, so actually Nicky is no longer gaining because he's watching the mirrors. He's possibly had the best out of his tyres. I really do think that Aelok Iyengar's got half a chance of hanging on, because even if they do catch him, Jack, the later into the race that happens, the less time he has to defend, the more defensive he's likely to be, because the more real that chance of a race win becomes.
Yeah, you do start overdriving. All of a sudden, even though you've still got the same gap that you've had for the past 5 minutes, the cars look an awful lot bigger in your rearview mirrors for no particular reason. You do start to panic. It's going to be a late lunge, though. It's not even a late lunge, actually. Scott Bugner just drives up to the back of and then past Nicky Taylor and into the braking zone, was almost entirely ahead, wasn't he? Scott Bugner into that second place. And Taylor, I wouldn't say giving it up without a fight, because that's not the Nicky way. And here he comes, actually. He's going to give it another blast at it. And Aelok Iyengar will be looking in the rearview mirrors, absolutely praying and hoping that Nicky gets his elbows out, which is something that you don't normally have to wish for twice.
Well, let's see. Well, actually, Nicky sensibly doesn't go for the lunge down into turn 5. I was about to say that I waste my breath on this at least once every broadcast that we do. If drivers just worked together, they would go around the circuit an awful lot more quickly than if they were banging into each other. And that's not what they were doing. As soon as they started to battle, Iyengar started to get away again. Speaking of banging into each other, someone's off down at turn 5. Sam Zero, I think that was, who really, his race has gone from fairly promising at the start to now an utter disaster. But yes, if Bugner and Taylor start battling, then Gibson joins in the fun. That will delay them even more, and Iyengar will get further ahead. So let's see whether Bugner and Taylor leave each other alone for long enough that they might be able to catch the leader.
Yeah, but this is multi-manufacturer touring car racing, and
I know.
on enough of them by now to know that that's absolute codswallop and that's never going to happen. I thought you out of everybody would know that, but it is certainly very entertaining, though. We do like to watch it as spectators. Well, we've had a lot of people clamouring for another touring car series. We've had a lot of people clamouring for these 20-minute races back as well. I hope you're happy, everyone, because to be honest, I certainly am. I do like the 40-minute races, the double distance races, and even this has been extremely entertaining.
Absolutely, but I mean, it helps that we've got a big grid. It helps that the cars are all very evenly matched. They're all drivable as well. It's one of the big appeals of the TCR formula, after all, in the real world, and it translates nicely over into the sim, it seems. And as a very wise Brummy once told me, TCR is the future, apparently, and you can see why, because this is the kind of racing that it does provide. Now, Jens Verhoeven on the tail of Paul Laramie. This is for 14th place, heading towards turn number 1. Cooper ahead of Honda, and then the recovering Andy Dorman, who hasn't actually done much recovering in this race, although he might pick up a couple of places here, because these two are really battling with each other. Out wide goes the Honda, and here comes Dorman sweeping around the outside. He's not left much room, but then that was always likely to be the case. The Honda shoots straight on, and Dorman might now get past Jens Verhoeven. He's on the outside through turn 5. Let's hope Jens leaves him room. He doesn't. He squeezes him right over the edge of the road. The positions stay the same.
Does that very wise Brummy potentially pay your wages, Andy? Am I hearing in the background?
I couldn't possibly comment, Jack.
No, absolutely not. No, but yeah, it is very entertaining indeed. I will give you that one. Yeah, so by the looks of it, Jens Verhoeven is sort of stuck down in 15th place. It is a bit of a shame to see not see Andy Norman further up. But to be honest, I know these TCRs are built very strong to withstand plenty of bumps and bruises, but that doesn't mean they're not impenetrable. Sometimes you will get a bit of damage. And of course, sometimes that damage isn't worth coming into the pits for. So maybe that is what happened to the likes of Andy Dorman, who we've seen in the wars in the early parts of this particular race. So you never know. That could be why he's struggling a little bit, and maybe a few of the others, the likes of Jack Smith as well, who's not putting the lap times together that maybe we come to expect.
I was just about to make that point, because he and Joel Lass stuck outside of the top 10 now. Remember, Lass was second in race number 1 and just hasn't made the progress in this race. Kyle Felvers actually is still only in 6th position. So, yeah, this is all a little bit interesting, isn't it? That Kyle Felvers, though, is now trying to get up the inside of Nathan Blank and likely will have a go into turn number 1. As soon as this battle's resolved itself, though, we might have to turn our attention to an impending battle for the race lead, because Scott Bugner has taken a full second out of Alec Iyengar on the last lap. They're almost nose to tail. Here comes Felvers up the inside. He takes 5th place away, but it's side by side for the race lead. Scott Bugner up the inside of Alec Iyengar, and it looks like the dream of a race victory has now slipped away for the Honda driver. The next question, Jack, is whether or not he can hang on to a podium.
Yeah, I'm pleased that we have Scott Bugner back. I'm very glad that we've got him back, and he'll be a popular winner here as well. But I have to say, Alok Iyengar, he had my vote in the back of my mind. He would be a very popular race winner at Portimao. But still, that race podium is still on the card, and he is against some of the best now. So he's going to have to prove his worth against the likes of Nicky Taylor, Oliver Gibson, and maybe even if he puts a couple of moves on Scott Bugner, we can see a bit of an upset going further forward. It is always easier to catch than be caught. Alok Iyengar now has the luxury, shall we say, of a slipstream, and he also has the luxury of being able to see where Scott Bugner is braking, when he's coming off the brakes, what his turn-in is like, how smooth he is, and basically learning from the driver in front, who's obviously a little bit quicker than Alok. And by looks of it, he hasn't been dropped yet, so maybe he is picking up a few tips here and there and trying to maintain his podium position. He's at the moment doing a pretty good job of it.
Absolutely, he looks a lot quicker now that Bugner's gone through than he did when he was out on his own. And there is a theory about that, isn't there? That sometimes you do get quicker when you're following another car. So I do listen to you sometimes, Jack. Alec Iyengar in 2nd position and might be about to have a go for the lead, although he does run wide there coming out of the ultimate corner. If he doesn't make any mistakes, he can definitely get a podium, but what will be crucial is how he deals with Nicky Taylor, because if he really fights Nicky for 2nd position, then that will allow Oliver Gibson to close in, whereas actually if Taylor gets a run on him, Alok might be better off letting him go. I'm sure he won't, but with a lap to go, the battle is on for the podium places. Scott Bugner looking good for a race win, but Iyengar 2nd, Taylor 3rd and Gibson 4th. Are getting closer and closer together, and this could be Nicky Taylor's opportunity, but Iyengar knows how to defend. Look, goes in tight. Will he stop the car on the apex? He tries to use the curb, runs wide, but the next corner's a left-hander, and I think he might just hang on. Maybe not.
Yeah, let's call it perfect car placement, because he is putting his car all the way on the inside, but unfortunately the cutback is not going to be kind to him as they go into one of the most popular overtaking opportunities. He's gone late on the race, to be fair. Lots of momentum tried to be carried, but Nicky Taylor knows what he's doing, doesn't he, at this point in the race, and he slots his way up his inside, gets a good run, but not good enough, Andy. They're almost going 3 wide as they head towards the fast-flowing uphill section, and Alok is on the inside, and tell you what, he's run wide, but he is putting up a good fight, isn't he? He's using all the track and more, shall we say, to stay ahead of Nicky Taylor.
The phrase hanging on by the skin of his teeth
well,
is
yeah.
here, but actually it's working well, because he's now sort of backing Taylor up into Gibson, and look at the gap back Gibson, because Oliver Gibson wants to get on the podium, dives to the inside of Nicky Taylor, side by side for 3rd place with less than half a lap to go, and I think Iyengar could be off the hook here. Down through the dip they go. Taylor will fend off Gibson for now, but into the next braking zone there could be a chance for the Audi. No, he can't quite get there, but that might just be the reprieve that Alec Iyengar needed. The race win looks like it's going to Scott Bugner. 2nd should be Alec Iyengar, but who will finish 3rd on the inside? Looks to go Oliver Gibson. He was all over the grass through the penultimate corner, and I think that might now have been his last opportunity. Through the final turn they go, though. What a classy drive this has been from Scott Bugner. Picked his way through the early race carnage, got into 2nd, caught the leader, and he will become the winner of round number 2 of the VRRC Touring Car Cup. Across the line he goes. It's Hyundai victorious in race number 2 here at Portimao. Alok Iyengar 2nd position, surely a candidate for driver of the round. 3rd, Nicky Taylor. 4th, Ollie Gibson. Kyle Felvers, the race 1 winner, is 5th, ahead of Josh Martin, Eric Axelson, Elliot Dalton-Ayres, Nathan Blank, and the feisty Paolo Tempera, who rounds out the top 10. Joel Lask and Jack Smith will be disappointed there, both of them outside of the top 10, ahead of Andy Carroll, Jens Verhoeven, Andy Dorman, Paul Laramie, Sam Zero, and the luckless and very badly damaged John Jones will limp home at the back of the field after a brilliant race. Jack, that was everything that we advertised of that reverse grid race, wasn't it? That was a fantastic way to round out the night.
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest, I think it is everything we advertised from the entire evening. It was just pure out-and-out touring car action, wasn't it? Yeah, a little bit messy in the second race, but when isn't it a little bit messy in whatever series that you stick a reverse grid on, to be honest? There's a reason why everybody loves the reverse grid. It's so you can get surprise action like the likes of A-Lock Ironguard getting on the podium, so you can see people like Scott Bugner, Nicky Taylor, Oliver Gibson, particularly Kyle Felvis, charging through and making some fantastic overtakes. Of course, people sort of half enjoy watching crashes. There's a casual motorsport fan that will watch NASCAR only for the crashes. But it's just brilliant to see, isn't it?
That's not all that happens in NASCAR, I feel like I should say. But
yeah,
yes,
they turn left as well.
They do. They do it very well. It was fantastic before I feel personally attacked. A brilliant performance there by Scott Bugner, though, to get the race victory. And I think in a moment or two, we should hopefully be able to have a word with our podium finishers after what was a bruising but very entertaining second race of the night then. We will hear from our drivers on the podium in just a couple of minutes' time. Well, a fantastic second race of the evening here on the VRRC for the Touring Car Cup has just been concluded with a fantastic drive by Scott Bugner to race his way through the reversed grid to claim a race win in the second race of the night. Alec Iyengar and Nicky Taylor joining him on the podium, and those three drivers all join us now in the commentary box. Scott, we'll start with you. The race winner, I think I remarked about halfway through that race that we hadn't really mentioned you all that much, and yet you'd worked your way into a podium place by that stage, and I think that was because there was a lot going on around you, and you were actually doing really well not to be directly involved in it.
I felt like the Civics all over again. Like my second race was just luck. I was just in the right place at the right time. Cars were going left and right, and I was just driving straight. And luckily enough, I didn't hit any of them, really.
You're making that sound a lot easier than it is, because actually there is a lot of skill involved in accident avoidance, and that's something you had to draw on quite a lot in that race.
Yeah, there was quite a few. I think, the safety car sort of just calmed it down a bit, and then halfway through the first lap after the safety car come in, I think 2 or 3 went off, and I looked up, I was like, oh, I'm in 6th. This is good. And then just sort of worked my way through, and Nicky sort of helped me out a little bit by not defending too hard. And then, got caught up to the leader and made the move and made it stick.
Yeah, that was an interesting phase of the race, actually, because once you broke into second place, I think it was like 3.5 seconds or so that you had to gain to catch the race leader. You obviously showed them the pace that you've got on a single lap, but it's breaking through to the front of the pack that's so hard to do. Once you're at the front, you're quick, but everyone else is so evenly matched that it's hard to get there.
Yeah, it's really difficult. In the first race, I had good pace, but my tyres just went off halfway through. But I knew that the pace was good. The race pace is always better than my qualifying pace. So I knew that if I could get near the front, I can fight for a win.
You did. You got the win, and that means you've had a decent points haul from this first night of racing. We certainly had you circled as someone who was going to be a championship contender this season. Would you agree with that?
I wouldn't be racing if I didn't agree with it. You know, I've got to come in hoping and knowing that I can win. I've done it before. I feel like I've got the pace, but it's very evenly matched, and it's going to be interesting, I think.
It certainly is, but that was a really classy performance that from you, Scott, to work you through all of that action, and a big congratulations on the win.
Thank you very much.
Scott Bugner then gets the win in our second race of the night. It was so nearly, though, a first ever victory on the VRRC for the man Jack, who eventually came home with a solid second place.
Yeah, to be honest, I was half struggling to remember who actually came second, and I thought, oh, how could I forget? It's Alok Iyengar as well, isn't it? Alok, big congratulations to you. First time I think we've ever actually spoken to you in the commentary box. And hopefully, it feels like a bit of an honour. But we're buzzing to see you on the second step of the podium.
Yeah, thank you, Jacko. Yeah, completely unexpected. Given I finished last in the first race. I mean, I had a jump start, so wasn't a good race. I'm not used to driving tin tops a lot. I'm more a single-seater driver, so you could see that in my driving style as well. Still getting used to the tin tops. Still trying to understand the physics of the cars a bit. Honestly, I was just hoping to get a top 8 finish in the reverse grid. Got an excellent start. Then the safety car came out, and I was like, come on, not now. But then thankfully had another good start. I was really hoping that I could have kept Scott behind me, but at the same time my tires were giving up, so I just wanted to finish the race. And then on the last lap, you had Nicky, who was literally all over the place. Thankfully, I defended. I'm happy with second, but in all honesty, I still have a second to gain to be with the top guys. I feel like it was more like a lucky podium for me today.
Well, I wouldn't say a lucky podium. Look, that's a bit unfair to you. I think it's never a lucky podium with this many talented drivers out there on the grid. Two phases of the race are very interesting to me. It was that safety car restart. It looked like you started, you just went as soon as you got the okay from the VSC was coming in. It was about 4 corners to go, and you just lit your front tires up and you were away. Is that something that you'd spent the last lap and a half thinking about, or was that just an instinctive moment where you just thought, okay, I can go, so I'm going to go?
No, I actually thought about that. I felt like if I could go on the second gear and get a bit more traction out of that corner, and basically just go for it, and yeah, it was planned.
Well, it was a very good plan, I have to say, because it worked an absolute treat. And the second phase I wanted to have a quick chat to you about was, of course, when Scott Bugner actually got past you. And we were sort of commenting that maybe you would struggle to keep on the podium. But as soon as Scott got past you, you looked to actually follow him, and you seemed to learn a lot and actually picked up the pace. Did you feel that in the car, that all of a sudden you could follow someone and you learned quite a bit?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was doing that during the practice as well. Like I said, a lot of my lines are still single seaters. I don't tend to use curves a lot, so I'm just like, I was just following and trying to learn. I'm still in massive learning phase at the minute, so it's all about just trying to get as much track time and follow the quick guys and look, I'm here to win, and not just a race but win the championship. So yeah, it's still a long way for me to go, but I'm happy with the podium, and I really liked the the reverse grid. Even in actual racing that I do in single seaters, the reverse grids always make interesting racing.
Well, it's fantastic. Hopefully you go back and watch that one a lot, because it was definitely worth it, I would say. We don't see you for the entirety of the race, but we do see you crossing the line. That's always nice as a driver. We've also come to the conclusion that we're going to be giving you the driver of the round as well for that second race. It was
Lovely.
brilliant to see you on the podium, and we always like to commemorate that.
Thank you, Jacko. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Alok. And I believe Andy is stood. Well, I say stood. That's a bit of a reflex action. Probably sat virtually with our third place driver.
I've just climbed off the ceiling, which is where I spent the last half an hour or so. And yes, I can now have a chat with our third place finisher, Nicky Taylor. Nicky, good to see you on the podium. Looked for a while there like it might be a race win, or at the very least second place. But I'm going to hazard a guess you maybe ran out of tyres a bit towards the end.
No, didn't run out of tyres, just not quick. Genuine to God, not quick. I changed something with my wheel before the start of quali. It was theoretically it should have worked, and I was getting used to it, but it was kind of to the point of I'd done it too late, and I was trying to learn as driving, which is never a good thing. But at the end of the day, it was quite good. I knew Scott was going to come, so he literally just come straight through, and I was like, there's no point in me fighting it because I can see you're quicker, and I'm happy with coming 13th to 3rd, so I'm fine. Lost it a bit. Literally, I got up to Alok and I was like, "Oh my god, he's actually a very, very good racer." Because obviously, I've never really had any affairs with Alok or anything, and I've never been near him on track. So it was quite interesting to see how he raced. And I will say, out of the front runners and everyone who I've been racing with in VRRC, he is in my top 3 for the most hard people to get past and most clean. So I have to give him that. But yeah, it's quite fun and just screwed my entry a bit, and he held it quite well, so couldn't do much more.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that we've spent a lot of time tonight talking about, Nicky, is how evenly matched everybody is. There's something about these TCR cars, I think, that really allows everyone to showcase their talents to the best of their abilities, and that produces great close racing. It's what we enjoy watching, and it is the kind of racing that I know you enjoy being a part of as well. You can really get stuck in, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, this is great for me as well in the off season because obviously my Mini Cooper season has now finished. That finished at Brands Hatch last week, so it's good practice for what we're hopefully going into next year, or like front wheel drive, good power cars without spoiling too much stuff. But yeah, it's good practice, and I love it. Racing TCRs every single championship, even when I haven't been on the pace, like not the previous one, but the one before. I'm like I have fun and it's been good, but I think we're like if we can keep the 20+ grids up for the rest of the season, the reverse grid is literally anyone's game, as is shown. Because Kyle tried to push through as much as he could. I had him on the voice chat, but even with that, he's literally the pace is strong from Kyle, and obviously it's mad strong because he got pole by God knows how much, and he's just been rapid all night. But literally, just because of how much the toe is worth, and just because if you get out of clean air of people, it's quite hard to catch. But at the end of the day, it's come away from me and Kyle. Kyle's second in the championship, me fourth, and us joint. Although it's kind of irrelevant, joint team leading champion with Scott and Joel. It's quite good. It's quite a good end to the night.
I'd say a podium's certainly not a bad way to end the night, Nicky. Thanks for popping in for a chat with us as well. And I'm sure it won't be the last time that we're seeing you on the podium. So best of luck for the rest of the season, mate.
Cool. Cheers. Hopefully not. Should be champion this year. We'll see to that soon enough.
There we go. That's a bold claim to make at the end of the first round of the championship. Thank you very much, Nicky, for popping in for a chat. And, some interesting interviews there, Jack, to have with our podium finishing drivers. Some of them surprised to be up there, some of them perhaps hoping for better. But all in all, I think most people enjoying what we've been able to provide tonight.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. The spectators are impressed. Hopefully, that Rich Hayden is impressed as well. And I believe, even though he's literally sat next to me in my office, Rich, we're going to try and have a conversation online. If it doesn't work so well, then we are going to pass over to Andy. So otherwise, we might echo each other. But I'm guessing you're very pleased with tonight as well.
What a great first round. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Like I said, I'm not in my usual office. As Jack said, I'm with him today. But yeah, that was fantastic. So thank you to all the drivers that turned up and raced. Apart from the safety car period at the beginning of the second race, where I just needed to ask everybody to take a breath and try and compose themselves before we restarted. What a great 2 races.
It absolutely was, yeah. And you've been hesitant to bring out the multi-manufacturer races, haven't you, for quite some time now? But realistically, there were so many different cars. They were all vying for the race victory, all vying for podium positions, and that must be very satisfying from your perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the reason why I'm not keen on multi-manufacturer racing is because generally within sim racing you can get some performance differences, and when you don't have performance differences, you can get some issues with drivers thinking that their cars have got performance issues. So just to stop those conversations, I usually stick to single makes. However, this pack of cars produced by Gorilla Mods
is really even. They're basically the same cars with different body shells and slightly different wheelbases, which makes them extremely close, as we've just seen. So, yeah, long may this continue.
Absolutely, yeah. It's an exciting time for VRRC, of course, and the touring cars and everything like that. And hopefully, everybody out there agrees with us and Rich that it's been a successful opening round. So, thank you very much for having a quick chat with us, Rich. Andy, I think it's probably about that time that we start thinking about rounding the night out.
Yeah, I sort of don't want to though. Actually, this has been a lot of fun. I always do enjoy these VRSCC Wednesday night. VRSCC. VRCC.
Who is that?
I'm having a bit of a moment tonight, Jack. We're nearly at the end. We're nearly there. The VRCC. Dear me.
VRRC.
Oh my goodness.
Let me start that again. I always do enjoy these VRRC Wednesday nights, you know, Jack. And this one in particular, give me touring car racing on a Wednesday night, and I'm always going to have some fun. It probably is best for all of us that we bring that fun to an end fairly swiftly. Before we do, though, let's take a look, shall we, at what the championship standings are like at the end of our first two races. Early stages, of course, 7 more weeks of racing still to go, as well as drop scores to be taken into account later on in the season as well. But as we can see, it's nice and close. Scott Bugner, 1 point clear of Kyle Felvers at the top of the championship table. Eric Axelson in 3rd, Nicky Taylor 4th, and Joel Laskin 5th position. As you'd expect, it's all very tight. 6th position with the Driver of the Round award going his way as well is Alec Iyengar. 7th for Josh Martin, 8th Jack Smith, 9th Paolo Tempera, and Oliver Gibson rounding out the top 10. But Jack, I fully expect that to chop and change quite a bit, especially over these early weeks.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've only got 12% of the championship completed, realistically, haven't we? So we do need to take everything with a little bit of a pinch of salt, but a lot of drivers will be fairly confident that they can carry some momentum into round 2 and obviously then carry it to round 3 and forward, etc. and etc. And to be honest, I think there's some optimism for drivers who didn't necessarily do so well. I think Andy Dorman showed in race 1 that he's got good pace, he's got good racecraft, maybe ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time, like you mentioned at the beginning of race 2, which saw him fall back down the order. Jack Smith maybe thought it was going to go a little bit better for him tonight on a return to VRRC Championship racing. He's down in 8th place. Again, 1 race victory for him all of a sudden jumps him well within the top 3 probably, or top 5 at least. So plenty of drivers that'll be thinking, you know what, it's not the end of the world. We can bounce back.
Indeed so. Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating championship battle, that is for sure. Every Wednesday night, we will have action from the VRRC Touring Car Cup. And next week, we'll be racing in France at the Paul Ricard circuit, the home of the French Grand Prix these days, before heading to Spa, Norris Ring, Nürburgring, Barcelona, Imola, and it all concluding around the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. So lots more touring car action coming your way here on the VRRC. But Jack, that's not all, is there? Because there's plenty of other ways that you can get involved in racing here at the VRRC.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We're filled to the brim with action here at VRRC. You can go to the Time Attack. Oh, we've got a new graphic. Time Attack, we can go to Spa-Francorchamps, the slightly older, modern-style F1 car. I think, is that an early 2000s? Probably, Andy, you'd probably be able to correct me on that.
I think so.
Yeah, I was going to say early 2000s. I was just always a little bit hesitant. With Spa-Francorchamps with the Time Attack at the moment, that runs from the 29th of October for 2 weeks, round 5. Remember, there are real-life prizes, a lot like what we have for the championship the Wednesday night championships as well. So please do get involved with that. I'm not sure if we've got all the other graphics ready for us, but there are fun races, of course, as well. At the VRRC, they hosted on 7:30 every Sunday. It's a pick and mix championship, so you can basically have an opportunity to vote for which cars and which tracks and everything like that. But we're going to potentially have a little bit of rethink of that. I've just been notified. So at the moment, that's how it stands, but it may well very much change. So we're going to just stick with the fact that you can do time attacks at the moment in a mid-2000s F1 car around Spa.
Indeed so, which is plenty to keep you occupied for the time being. Right then, good news, everyone. We're done with our first night here at the VRRC. I'm going to run and hide from Rich Hayden now, I think. But we will be back, hopefully, next week for the second round of the VRRC Touring Car Championship here at well, it will be at Paul Ricard for the second round. A big thanks to everyone for helping put together the broadcast and the event. As always, a lot of hard work goes on behind the scenes, which you don't necessarily get to see as a viewer. So a big thanks to everyone for that. And we will all be back again, same time, same place, next Wednesday night.